Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And typically it would be Mr. Michael Becker, the governor of Texas, smartest guy in the room, joining us in the podcast. But unfortunately, he's on another due diligence assignment. So sitting in the podcast, the professor himself, Mr. James Eng. James, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Paul.
James, what's going on in the Old Capital world these days?
Two events coming up. First one, Saturday, March 30th, is going to be our Hoops for Homelessness 3-on-3 basketball tournament here in Dallas at the SMU Center. And we're bringing out listing brokers, property managers, general partners to battle it out to say and raise a little bit of money for City House. And so City House is a nonprofit based here in Dallas, and they essentially provide housing for kids and feed them and shelter them while they're going through any traumatic situations, and just a great organization. So we're raising money for them on Saturday, March 30th. So definitely register for that event and come out and support your favorite team.
Now, you were recently at one of their homes, and give us a kind of a sense and flavor of what you saw.
Yeah, I mean, at any point they can get called in to really pull kids out of abusive situations, and they have to sort of shelter them and feed them and get them ready and prepared for getting them back into school or prepare them to go on job interviews. And so they can either take cash donations or gift cards, and they have a very unique facility called My Friend's House, and they have no closets and no bathtubs there. So there's just a lot of different areas that people have been affected. And this is an organization that has been doing it for over 30 years. And so an organization that's very well run, and we wanted to help them and sort of rebuild their facility and help. That facility has been in existence for about 10 years. And so it needs a little rehab.
As multifamily people, we're very familiar with rehab of multifamily properties. So what else is going on?
The second event is Wednesday, April 3rd. Mark Dotzauer will be giving his State of the Market at the Grapevine Convention Center. And so get your ticket for that at oldcapitalpodcast.com.
The doctor is making a house call. You want to be in the audience to listen to Dr. Dotzauer. We usually have about 450 to 500 people to watch Dr. Dotzauer, to talk to Dr. Dotzauer, to get some questions answered by the man himself. This is probably the most entertaining and futurist in commercial real estate and banking. I mean, he is the guy that everybody asks the questions about what's going on next. So we want you to be part of the audience on that. Anything else?
No, I mean, I've been to a bunch of events where he's spoken. It's, a couple $100 just to get in the door. And so this one, I think, will sell out quickly. So get your tickets early.
And there's no cost. I think that's probably the biggest thing. There's no cost to attend Dr. Dotzauer's event. So, and James is right. It would cost you a couple $100 to listen to, but we'll forgo that cost and I'll pay for it. And James will too. So good for you. So in the podcast today, it is a little coaching and counseling session with you. We want to have you understand a little bit about what we're seeing going on. So I want to point out a trend that I'm seeing today. It's not a very good trend for apartment buyers or apartment sellers, but it is a shift that is happening all over the country. Perhaps if we didn't bring it to your attention, you probably wouldn't recognize the problem. But I want to bring it to your attention because I have a concern, and so should you. It's the independence is leaving the commercial real estate business. Independence is leaving the commercial real estate business. Large commercial mortgage companies are buying or hiring apartment real estate agents in their companies. So independent listing agents are now employed by lenders. In the last few years, just to name a few, apartment lenders like Walker & Dunlop, Berkadia, Northmark are hiring independent real estate agents and making them employees of the lender. Employees of the lender. So gone are the independent apartment realtors that represented the seller only. So how do you serve two bosses? The seller, who hired you to represent them, and the lender who you really work for as an employee. You may say, Paul, what's the harm? Or why is Paul on a soapbox today? And how does this concern me? Or perhaps it's just sour grapes because Old Capital is an independent mortgage lender and doesn't have realtors working for them. Well, I think it's a concern. In the podcast today, we focus on how many commercial real estate agents are losing their independence and becoming employees of mortgage lenders and how that could affect you. It's a shift that we're seeing, and we wanted to bring it to your attention. So I want to turn it over to James. And James, what do you think?
Yeah, so I brought to the table a couple of examples too. One from the seller's perspective, and then the second one is from the buyer's perspective. So let's really take it from the seller's perspective first. I mean, as a seller, you hire the listing agent to do two things. Number one, get the highest price, and number two, close the deal. And, let's say a property has two bids in best and final, and one for $20 million. And they're going to use third-party financing, so someone like Old Capital. And the other one is for $19.8 million, so $200,000 less. But they are going to finance the deal through the listing broker. And so the broker presents the offers and says, we really like the $19.8 million offer. It's got our in-house financing. We're going to make sure they close. And the seller loses out on $200,000 in net proceeds. So why would the listing broker do this? Either they're getting paid to close loans or they have been paid upfront when they came over to this firm to push a loan product. So did the listing broker close the deal? Yes. But did they get you the highest price for your property? No. So as a seller, you care the deal gets closed, but you really don't care about how the deal is financed. Your job to your investors is to get the highest return possible. And so when you go to sell a property, does it make sense to hire an independent listing agent who's going to get the highest offer, or use a listing agent who's going to push their lender onto buyers no matter the price? So that is example number one from the seller's perspective. Example number two from the buyer's perspective, and we've seen this more and more, is you submit an LOI on a deal, you're invited to best and final. You're asked to fill out a buyer questionnaire, which asks how you plan on financing the property, what's your rehab, all those typical types of questions. But then attached to the email is a debt term sheet from the in-house lender for the listing broker. And you feel pressured to use the in-house lender to win the deal. And some of the issues that we've seen come up during acquisition and post-close are listed here below. So number one, let's say on the $20 million purchase price, the in-house lender at best and final says, I got a term sheet from my guy. It's $16 million on the initial term sheet, 80% loan to value. It's great. But let's say 30 days into the acquisition, they actually come back and say, actually, we can only do $15 million. So you already have hard money. You've already spent due diligence, pursuit costs, but now you got to close the transaction. So you potentially now have overpaid for that property because you thought the loan amount was going to be $1 million higher. But you're stuck in the transaction and you got to close. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, the lender really should be on your side, reviewing physical due diligence, financial due diligence, third-party reports, and letting you know if there's anything not accurately represented by the seller. And they really should be an extra pair of eyes for you. So if something comes up in the transaction that should be in the favor of the buyer, but you have no one on your side to fight for you, then you're going to lose out. So if listing broker and the loan officer in the same company, same office, down the hallway from each other, they might not be bringing some of these items to your attention as they don't want you to retrade the deal. So every discussion you now have with the loan officer is also a discussion with the listing broker. So as they say in law enforcement, anything you say can and will be used against you.
In a court of law. That's right.
And number three is, loyalty really brings about flexibility. And so what I mean by that is, once you close a deal, that might be a 60 or 75 day process. But then a lot of these Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loans could be anywhere from 1 year all the way up to 12 years, 15 years with the lender. So in terms of asset management, whether it's CapEx draw, supplemental loans, assumptions, if you go from lender to lender to lender, yes, they might all be Fannie Mae, but you do one deal with Northmark and another deal with Walker & Dunlop, another deal with Berkadia, you build no track record with a lender. And so as we get deeper into the cycle, general partners are going to have to hold these deals longer. And the real winners are going to be the guys who can manage properties well and really asset manage, get the CapEx done, and get their money back in terms of CapEx draws. And so it might be harder to execute your plan if your lender is not easy to work with, because every time they look at your schedule of real estate, you have a new lender on it. And so loyalty is going to bring about a lot of flexibility.
I can't have said that better than what James said, is that if you've never done a transaction, but if you're doing your second transaction with the same lender, I could tell you in the second transaction, that lender's going to have a lot more flexibility with you if it's the same lender. Everyone thinks, well, it's just a Fannie Mae loan. Everybody has the same rules for Fannie Mae. Well, there's 25 separate Fannie Mae DUS lenders out there, and there's 25 different DUS servicers, all connected with the same company. So if you have more products with one DUS lender, the more flexibility you're going to have. So I can't pound the table enough about that.
So I used to be on the credit side, and one of the questions that we always got was, okay, so on this particular property, we're going to bend, or we're going to be a little bit more lenient in this regard. Is this person going to come back and use us? Or is it just going to be a one-time deal? And is it going to be a transaction, or is this going to be an actual relationship? And so the credit officer, the credit risk officer on these deals is going to look at your past track record and really build upon that.
I can't say that enough again, James. Transaction versus relationship. And every lender wants to have a relationship. They just do not want to do one deal and then not do another deal, and not do another deal, not do another deal. They want you to come back and use them over and over and over again. You build a relationship with them. They know who you are. You know who they are. They know exactly. It's like dancing with Fred Astaire. You kind of know if he goes to the left, you go to the left. If he goes to the right, you go to the right. So that is important when your loan gets serviced after you close for 20 years, 10 years, 12 years. I mean, it's important to know your servicer.
So we noted a couple things here. This is really a buyer beware, but some things that as a buyer, if you're going into a transaction, be aware of listing brokers that are strongly suggesting the use of their financing, right? Tell listing brokers up front, this is my lender. This is who I've done 3 or 4 transactions with. Tell them they're in the tour. Tell them they're in the initial LOI. Tell them this is your third party lender term sheet. Show it to them. This is my transaction record stating your preference and your track record of closing with the lender. And if the lender sends you a term sheet, don't just look at the loan amount and the interest rate. You need to dig into the details of their underwriting and make sure that they've closed transactions like yours. Make sure you understand how they underwrote the deal. And, when there are 20 offers and 10 best and finals offers, you might have to miss out on a deal or two if you do not use the in-house financing team. However, as the market has softened a bit and there's less buyers, and we're seeing, maybe 5 to 10 offers on deals and 1 or 2, maybe 3 people in the best and final. If you are the strongest buyer, the best track record, stand strong on your offer and do not give in to sort of accepting the lender's in-house financing team. And so that's really from the buyer side. And from the seller side, make sure you're getting presented all the offers. Whether it's a $20 million offer with third party or 19.8 with in-house financing. Make sure you're getting all the offers, and make sure before you sign the listing agreement, how is the listing broker going to handle financing? Is it going to be an assumption? Is it going to be supplemental? Is it going to be new debt? How are they going to handle that? And making sure that you understand, going back to the loyalty piece, if this loan needs to be assumed, let's say you put a 12-year loan on the property and now you're 2 or 3 years into it, it needs to be assumed and there's going to be a supplemental. Understand how now it's not only the buyer who's going back and asking for this assumption supplemental, they're going to be looking at you, the seller, and saying, how much am I going to push for this seller? And how much should I be stretching on this deal if the seller's gone from, your shop to the next shop to the next shop for the last 3 deals? And so that loyalty piece comes in once again.
How important is that? You've gone through this a couple times where a buyer has used a lender for 3 or 4 times and then kind of had a gun put to their head to use the in-house lender's listing company. How did that affect the lender?
Well, yeah, now after 2 or 3 transactions, let's say, you bought a deal in 15, a deal in 16, and now it's 2019 and you're ready to go sell that deal. And, you're having to get a supplemental loan, whether it's either for your own account or for a potential new buyer. Those lenders are not going to be as favorable on that transaction. Thus, you are not going to get the best price when you go to sell. And so it's just going to be tougher for you to sell your asset at the best price.
A couple of additional points to be aware of. Number one, when you list your apartment building with a real estate agent, you are going to do your due diligence, right? You talk with several brokers, then you have them produce a broker opinion of value, a BOV. That's what the listing agent tells you your value is going to be or your possible sales price will be in the future. You talk about timing to sell, the marketing of the property, and I would hope you would speak about the costs to sell. With these listing agents that work for the lender, ask them if they will receive any additional income from their employer when recommending or requiring a borrower use the mortgage company. Why is that important? Because if you sell a $10 million property, the listing agent may get 2.5% commission or $250,000. And if they refer a borrower to their in-house lender and the lender does an $8 million loan, they may get 0.5% of the loan amount or $40,000 or more on top of that. You would want to know that, right? Number two, when you are buying your home, you had received a recommendation from your realtor for financing, right? That makes sense. A lot of folks do that. They use the realtor that recommends the financing. But how about having the listing agent recommend or require you use their home loan lender? Require in the sense that if you don't use our home loan lender, we will not sell you our house. Wouldn't you be concerned? Number three, well, Paul, it's all the same with Fannie and Freddie. All lenders have the same underwriting and pricing. Now, here's where I'll disagree with you. Not all agency lenders, and that's Fannie and Freddie, are the same. Here's an example. There are 25 Fannie Mae DUS lenders out there that all have similar underwriting rules, but they are not the same. Because Fannie gives these lenders the ability to underwrite and approve these loans, some lenders may be stricter, some may be softer in individual guidelines, but here's my point. When the listing broker highly suggests, and I put that in quotations, highly suggests you use their mortgage company, that loan will not be shopped around for the best price, the best terms, the best leverage, and the best servicing, best of anything. You get one choice, and that's their choice. The in-house lender will not shop the loan with another Fannie or Freddie lender. So how does that help you? It doesn't. They really give you two options. Number one, take it. Number two, leave it. Take it or leave it. And number four, James hit about this point a little bit earlier. Your lender wants a relationship. They want to know you, your property, your buying needs, and your wants. They want to work with you on long-term financing solutions. They do not want transactions. A single or a once-in-a-while transaction, quote, when you need us, we'll be there for you relationship. Here's the problem that comes with that. You will find a deal with the listing agent. That listing agent recommends you use their mortgage company, but you have 3 other transactions with XYZ Fannie Mae lender. Do you think the XYZ Fannie Mae lender is going to be upset that you did not come back to them for financing? Yes. Do they care? You bet. Again, they want the total relationship, meaning that they want to help you with new financing, but also they want to help you with possible assumptions or possible loan supplemental. They want the whole relationship. My concern is that if you only want to have a transactional relationship with the Fannie Mae lender, they won't be as generous to you or get their help in the future. Again, think of the big picture when it comes to real relationships like underwriting waivers, higher leverage, better pricing, more understanding with rehab draws. After 33 years in commercial real estate lending, be loyal to your lender, and that lender will help you in the future. So in the book, Freakonomics, under the chapter called Incentives Matter, if you can figure out what people's incentives are, you have a good chance to understand how people will behave. The listing agent, since she now works for the lender, is getting compensated 2 ways. 1, from you, the seller, to list and sell the property, and 2, from the lender. Yes, the lenders are now paying the listing agents to push buyers to them. So we've heard in some cases up to 50% of the lender's origination fee is being paid to the listing agent. So that's like having your CPA work directly for the IRS. Wouldn't that be a conflict of interest? When you hear from the listing agent, quote, I think it would be important to visit with our in-house mortgage lender to get qualified, ... if you want to be considered for this deal, unquote. That's code for what? What are they really saying? Who are they really working for? Financing on apartments is important. There's a lot of money at risk. Earnest money, due diligence fees, attorney fees, application fees, and there is your reputation at risk if you do not close. You want to build a team with independent folks. You don't want your attorney representing the seller, would you? You wouldn't want your physical due diligence engineer representing a foundation company or a roofer? If they represented the roofer, I would probably say every time you're going to get a new roof being required to be on that property. You want a competent and independent voice representing you. You don't want a yes man on your team that doesn't have your partnership's interest in the right place. If something doesn't look right, you want to stop, and then someone yells, stop the presses, stop the presses. So raise your voice when you need financing. Raise your voice to an independent mortgage banker that represents you and your investors' interests. So now I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, and I mean, this is really a buyer beware. What we're running into is a lot of times it's really the first time buyers, sometimes second time buyers, and the first transaction, this wasn't around or this didn't happen. A couple of years ago, I ran into this on a deal in Atlanta. Then last year it was in Phoenix, and now it's right in our backyard. And so this is coming to your next deal. So just be prepared. And if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to us and we'll let you know the lay of the land.
That's great. Some great information, James. Again, the professor himself, James Eng, thanks for hanging out with the podcast today. Again, I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.